All right, guys. Ken Smith Fishing. This is the second to last part of my talk with Todd Driscoll on the update of the telemetry study. So they're tracking bass in Fork and on Toledo Bend by putting radio transmitters in them. And this is what I've been waiting on. So this video is going to prove me right, and it's going to prove me wrong. Because as you guys know, I have talked about turning off my electronics when I get around fish. And I've also talked about big motors spooking them. And that's probably something that I've caught more crud over from you guys saying, oh, I idled over a brush pile and caught an 8-pounder right after I did it. And there's another couple of people on YouTube who say, oh, you can idle over any brush pile. Todd can tell you you're wrong. This is good stuff, guys. Check it out.
All right, so let's, this will be, I'm sorry guys, I'm confusing myself. Part 4 or Part 5, I'll tell you right there what it is. We've got all these before. We've got Texas Park and Wildlife. Give me the title again. I just heard it and I can't remember.
District Fisheries Biologist.
District Fisheries Biologist. Kansas State educated. Right?
And Mississippi State.
And Mississippi.
Wildcats and Bulldogs.
Wait, did we finally just beat y'all in football this past weekend, Arkansas, maybe? I think
Heck, it was 2017, y'all's last SEC win.
We won this weekend.
Weren't you?
All right, he's beating up. All right.
And then Kansas State, Oklahoma.
That was Iowa State, Oklahoma.
The week before it was Kansas State.
Oklahoma's not good. My wife's a Sooner. She's not having fun, right? She cusses. I didn't know. I didn't marry her. Right? Man. Anyway, so she just. But I can't believe you said that on video. But we're leaving it in. So we're talking about now. We're talking about the telemetry studies on Toledo Bend and what we're seeing in offshore fish. So talk about what you define as offshore fish.
Yeah, for offshore structure, we're classifying that as points, drops, drains, channel swings, creeks, or just pretty indescript flats, that are void of structure. It's pretty amazing. I just crunched these numbers this morning just for our visit here. I'd really yet to dig into the data, and I never would have guessed it to be like this. But 45% of our observations were on indescript flats. That blew me away.
I'm going to guess why, but go ahead.
Now, the rest of it, I didn't calculate percentages for each one of the other categories, but just eyeballing it, it tended to be pretty equal amongst points, drops, drains, channel swings, or major creeks. But 45% of our fish locations were on indescript flats.
All right, so we talked in a prior episode, the main forage in Toledo Bend is threadfin.
Yes.
How do threadfin act in the summertime?
They suspend somewhat randomly.
Are these fish wolf packing them? Is that what they're doing?
When we're observing these fish that are on shad, it's 1 to 5 fish wolf packs.
So that's what's taking them out there on those indescript flaps. They're wolf packing those shad.
Could be. It's hard to have solid, factual explanations.
Yep. I mean
that's why some of this is fascinating. Why fish do what they do. I say threadfin suspend randomly. Really, I was wrong on that based on my own experience. What's also been fascinating over the years is getting back to a point we made earlier about bass being so reliant upon their forage base relative to their behavior and where they're going to be. Oftentimes, threadfin will be suspended around traditional structure like we talked about. Channel swings, drains, drops, things of that nature. I don't know if you see that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So maybe what you say is true, maybe not. Oftentimes if I just see shad, and let's face it, our electronics are good enough most of the time to see whether there's any predators around them. When I just see shad and shad only.
I saw a bass come up and bust a ball of shad on I'm brand new to live scope. I've told the guys, I'm going to fall out of the boat. You've had it several years. I watched a fish bust a ball of bait fish under me. I didn't have a spoon laying on the front.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome.
This is not a Garmin sales pitch, but
no,
but you are at a disadvantage if you don't have that tool on your front deck right now.
It really is amazing, and there's nothing else on the market right now like it, for sure.
You can see a predator fish around a group of bait fish, and you can see them bust them.
And you can also see when there's not, and my point there was where shad, to me, when they're demonstrating their natural behavior, when they're not being herded by a predator, oftentimes I see them suspending around structure drains, creeks, things of that nature. I never understood why. If threadfin are suspended 15 feet above the bottom of a creek channel in 30 feet of water, why do they care that creek's there? But oftentimes they're suspended above that creek channel. Just food for thought.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure, your idea explains that behavior of these fish over these flats.
Oh, we've established I don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't know about that, but it's really a head scratcher to me at this point. So many of these fish have been on these flats, including that. It may be a good segue into our 8-pound fish. That fish, when it has been offshore, over 30 feet off the bank, that's the only place it's ever been, is in the middle of the biggest indescript flat you can get on in housing, to where any educated angler with the tools and the technology is never going to pull up and say, you know what, I'm going to fish right here where that fish is. It is hundreds of yards away from any structure, from any kind of drain. It's on just a nothing flat. Now, it'll be on the biggest Mac Daddy stump or lay down in that area for sure. That makes sense. But structure, it could care less about.
Okay, so for those of you who didn't see it, on the Charger video, where I did the Charger boat review, I caught a 1031.
Wow.
On a flat in a nondescript area on the root ball of a giant laydown.
Makes perfect sense based on what we're seeing here.
So are those fish there because of the pressure?
Could be, because I thought about this morning when I generated that data point. 45% of our observations are on indescript flats. I think most of us, we've got high-end topography, the contours, the layout of the land, so to speak. Where are we idling all the time? Around the points, the drops, the channel swings, the drains. How much of the time are we spending up on these flats just looking for an isolated big stump or laydown?
Well, and I know you know this from being a Rayburn guy. Some of the best brush piles are in the most nondescript places because guys have just put them out on deep flats and they don't get hammered all the time.
Yeah, and the guys in the know do it intentionally to know that they're going to be hard to find.
Yep.
That's right. It could be behavioral. Could potentially be. But I thought that was pretty fascinating.
That's going to be fascinating 2 years into this because you'll be able to tell a lot more about that.
45% were on flats. Jumping into the fishing aspect of it. Now remember, the fishing was twofold. In fact, maybe I didn't go into enough detail, but what we do is when we get a lock on a fish, when I think we're about 100 yards away, we'll drop live scope to make sure that we don't disturb that fish unnecessarily. We want to watch it before we get close to it to prevent any biased behavior until we can pinpoint it. So we'll drop scope and watch the whole time.
How far do you do that away from the fish?
About 100 yards.
Okay.
And it's not exact, right?
Sure,
we just know from experience that the signal strength, okay, we're close enough to drop scope. And we continue to idle up there with Dan running the antenna.
Idle or troll motor?
Idling with the outboard.
Okay.
Watching that fish, letting Dan tell me where he thinks it is. And our first pass, essentially, documenting outboard noise and boat noise behavior is still with that live scope down, because you really have to idle over a fish to know, man, that's exactly where it was. But I'm able to watch to make sure that fish maybe doesn't necessarily completely move. And when we get to it, we know whether it's actively moving at that point anyway. So we drop scope, watch it from a distance, then do the idling. If it moves from the outboard motor noise, we document it. If it stays put, then we fish for it. That gets back to the two fishing methods. If it stays put, we back off 30 to 50 feet, and I cast to it 5 times with a 1/2 ounce weighted Texas rig worm, just to keep things standard and simple. Watch it the whole time on scope, put down with the antenna, make sure that fish doesn't move. We'll know instantly if it does, being that close. We will. Well, in doing that first fishing method of being back 30 to 50 feet, chunking that worm, 21% of the time that fish has moved. That's after it has stayed put, going 2 figure-8 idles over the top of it. We know it hasn't moved. The outboard motor noise didn't affect it. The presence of the boat did. And that's a lot of noise, no matter if the fish is 10 feet or 30 feet deep. We know how sound travels in the water. It's a lot of noise. When I'm fishing for it, we know that best we can tell, That fish had no effect of that boat motor noise. 21% of the time that fish has moved during that first 5 casts backed off of it.
All right, so let me go back through that again, make sure I understood. So they basically don't move from boat noise.
Did we not talk, maybe I jumped ahead of myself. Did we not talk about that?
If you did, I don't remember it.
No, you're right. Let's back up. Let's back up. I missed that. I'm sorry. Let's back up and look at that. Outboard movement due to the outboard. Okay. 29% of the time, yes. 46% of the time, no. 24% of the time, we documented, getting back to all this shad-related behavior, we documented that when we were getting close and pulling up on that fish was already moving
In movement.
relating to shad and suspended. Hence, we document that too because we have no way of knowing at that point, did the outboard motor, the boat, make the fish move? It was already on the move, just naturally. It's natural behavior. 24% of the time, these fish have been suspended. We can see them on scope around shad schools. Sometimes alone, sometimes with a wool pack of let's say 3 to 8 fish typically. Maybe only once or twice have I seen like a 20-plus bass school. They've all been just individual loners or just small wolf packs. So let me hit those numbers again. We out over that fish, 29% of the time it moves due to the boat, outboard. 46% of the time it didn't. And the remainder of the observations, 24% of the time, they were already pretty loose and moving due to natural behavior around shad.
At best, if you idle up to your spot, you're spooking a quarter of your fish.
So far, that's what our data indicates.
Okay?
And
Did y'all hear that?
It does. Now, we haven't segregated that out due to depth.
Nope. Yeah.
And I didn't have time to do that, but I can tell you that just anecdotally thinking about it, that 8-pounder particularly, I don't think it's been deeper than 12 feet. It's typically in 6 to 12 feet on these flats that I'm talking about. It's never moved because of the boat in that shallow of water. So you just can't assume that the shallower the fish is, the more likely it is to move necessarily. I mean, time will tell, so we'll get more observations and can maybe look at the depth factor due to movement because of the boat outboard.
Man, this is time consuming.
It is.
It's very time.
It takes us all day
Yeah.
to track 14 or 15 bass.
Yeah.
It does.
Fascinating.
But, you know, sometimes in 30 feet, sometimes the fish doesn't move, but sometimes it does.
Which just tells me, don't go up to them on your outboard. Take that out of the equation. Drop your trolling motor, come up to them quiet.
True. Of course, that's where some functioning forward sonar like live scope is going to come into play big time.
Yeah.
That's what I do a lot of the times is I don't idle. I just drop over proven deep, tight places in fast troll to trolling motor. I mean, I'm just assuming that the trolling motor is going to affect them less than the outboard.
Yeah.
Whether we know that or not, who knows?
Okay, so go back now to your data on what fishing for them does.
Yeah, if we idle over it, you know, 46% of those fish did not move, then we fish for the fish. I mean, if we affect the fish behavior, there's no need in trying to chase it down and fishing for it. It's already affected, done.
Right.
These are only fish that didn't move because of the outboard. We do that first fishing exercise 30 to 50 feet away. 21% of the time, those fish moved while we were fishing for them. And we have to make assumptions, right? We know they didn't move because of the outboard. We already did that. We're stopped, we're fishing for them. Depending on the wind, we're operating the trolling motor, you know, representing normal fishing behavior. We're going to assume anyway that our fishing affected the fish's movement. We're going to have to assume that as through the course of the study. Now, it could have been naturally related completely.
Sure.
But these real world studies, particularly in the water, I mean, some studies are hard to do, right? I mean, it's not like you can go count cattle in a pasture. You know, studying fish sometimes is pretty difficult. You just have to make certain assumptions, and that's one we're going to have to make.
Back to a prior video we talked, you've caught 2 of these fish.
Yes.
You caught one on the first cast. Did you catch both on the first cast?
Second one, I think it was the 3rd or 4th cast. It wasn't the first.
If he's there and he's going to eat, you're going to catch him in the first. Well, you're only giving him 5 casts, but.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, 79% of the time, our fishing event had no effect on it.
He just sat there and said, I ain't eating it.
He just sat there. And, the water clarity at housing is such that there's no question. Every cast I'm making,
He's seeing it.
he is seeing or sensing
So
that
for
lure.
our folks who don't know that, what's about water clarity in housing through this process?
Oh, based on the surface, our eyes, 4 feet down,
and
you can see the worm.
So I've always heard all kinds of numbers. As a biologist, is there a difference in how far a bass can see in the water versus how far you and I can see?
Who knows, right?
Okay. But
that's
you
a
know
good
they can
question.
feel it a lot further than they can see it.
Yes, they, their lateral line and their inner ear, they can feel vibrations, in a very sensitive way for sure.
So they know you've presented a bait to them or something has moved.
Given the accuracy of our telemetry equipment and that live scope, when we're fishing, the fish knows. If it can't see it, it knows there's a lure there. It dang sure does. So most of the time, though, that's had no effect. That's only 21% of the time that we document it. Now, that 79% of the time, that first fishing event backed off 30 to 50 feet had no effect. Then we pull up right on top of it,
Okay.
best we can. Right on top, whether it's in 8 feet or 30 feet, and drop a drop shot down there 5 different times, and maybe leave it down there 10 or so seconds. Pull it up, drop it again. Now that has had no effect at all. If a fish hasn't moved by then, getting right on top of it, not one time have we documented movement from that second fishing event. And this includes observations as shallow as 5 or 6 feet. It's been unbelievable.
Well, some of these are in grass, though, or vegetation of some kind.
Very few of these fishing events have been in grass. Maybe 5% have. The very shallow observations I'm talking about, no, they were in the bottom of a creek drain on a big stump. But literally, 5 to 6 feet under the boat on the bottom.
Tournament grade fish. Fish
Yes.
me and you want to catch.
Yes.
And they'll let you
Most of them 3.5+ pounds.
And they'll let you get right on top of them, pinging them with a live scope.
And dropping that bait straight down in 5 to 6 feet of water right on top of them. It's just almost unbelievable. We're not making any extra noise,
Yeah.
but we're just being normal anglers, operating a trolling motor, make sure we're right on top of it. The noise that makes. Talking, yeah. So
Fascinating.
water depth doesn't seem to really be a predictor.
How much more material do you have?
Not very much.
Okay.
I just have maybe a few more interesting tidbits.
Let's close this one and then we'll come back with sort of a summary.
Okay.
Okay, guys, so we're going to stop this video. We're going to come back with one more video. We're going to do a sort of a little bit of a summary. And you said you got a couple of more interesting tidbits. And I want to quiz you and get you to tell me everything you will about the 8-pounder. Because, that's right. Sure. That's the one we want to catch if we can catch it.
Yeah, sure.
So, all right, so thanks for tuning in, and we'll be right back here in the next couple of days with the last part with Todd, and we'll talk about the last little bit we know, and we're going to do more of these because this is just going to get more interesting. Stick around, guys.
All right, I told you. If you spook a third of your fish by idling too close to them with the big motor, by idling over your brush pile, by idling over whatever. Yeah, you may still catch a big one. You just spooked a third of them. And I still believe you spook a third of the smartest ones, the biggest, oldest, wisest fish. It's up to you what you do, but there is real proof evidence right there. They're tracking those fish. They can see how those fish react by them idling over them. Told you. But again, I'm wrong about the electronics, right? And I'll admit that. I'm still going to turn my electronics off most of the time, if I can, especially when I'm flipping shallow stuff. But anyway, great stuff. And I got to tell you, the last video, when he starts talking about what this big fish is doing, it's like, what? So stick around. This is good stuff, man. This is the most fun I've had. The boat review videos are great fun. This is the fish we're chasing after, and this is a guy who can watch them and tell you what they're doing. One more video, but trust me, we'll be back in front of this dude. He's a smart dude. He's got great resources. Kudos to Texas Park and Wildlife for funding this study. And now we get to see what happens as they transition to fall, to winter and then to the spawn, and that's going to be so interesting. So stick around. I'll be back in front of Todd again here real soon, but we got one more good video coming too. Thanks for tuning in, guys.